Hello, everybody. Just doing a quick video to promote something that I think is very important, that I think we should all come together on. Whether you're a flat earther, a globe earther, domer, no domer, infinite planar, or convexer, or concaver, it doesn't matter, what you are, what your beliefs are. What I've done is set up a petition on care2.com. I'll put a link in the descripts. It's called the Sovereign People's Movement to Abolish the Arctic and Antarctic Treaties. And I will put the link, but it's www.thepetitionsite.com slash 336. I'll just put the link in the descripts and I'll put it up on screen, but it's definitely something that you'll want to copy and paste. But it should be searchable. Again, it's care2petitions, and it's ultimately hosted on thepetitionsite.com. Again, the name of the petition is the Sovereign People's Movement to Abolish the Arctic and Antarctic Treaties. I hope that everybody that sees this, regardless of what you think of the shape and nature of the world, signs. The default goal was 1,000 signatures, but I upped that to 100,000. And I gave us a year to get there. Maybe we can just blow that out of the water way quicker than that. But I think 100,000 signatures is a realistic goal globally, or worldwide goal. I don't think we should have any problem getting that number of signatures. And again, this doesn't necessarily have to be strictly for flat earthers. One thing that I did want to point out when I started this petition is you have some options as to, like what genre or what banner would you consider this position. And for something like the Antarctic Treaty, from a stationary planar's perspective or a globe earth skeptic's perspective, so I guess helping animals is probably the only thing that I didn't really see as directly would apply to this. But, I guess it sort of would help animals if you think about it. But environment and wildlife, yeah, it's definitely related to that. Human rights, well, certainly related to that. Our right to travel and our right to have free will is certainly something guaranteed to us by God. Faith and religion is certainly implied in this. Health, absolutely. I've experienced tremendous health effects in the last 7 months due to this journey of science that's culminated into this petition here for this time being. Politics, well, it absolutely applies to politics, so that's the one I ultimately selected. Improving education, sure. Corporate accountability, well, I think that would also apply if we're talking about possibly sending corporations for free enterprise to the southernmost regions to get them the heck out of our backyards with their fracking and strip mining. So yeah, that applies, corporations. Media, culture, and sports. Well, sports and pets probably don't apply to this, or helping animals, sports for sure. Unless you're talking about maybe cross-country skiing, but media and culture for sure. So maybe I should do an Arctic petition under each and every one of these, but at the end of the day, I picked politics, and I guess you could probably see why, but had a tough time picking, I must say. Hopefully you globers out there want to know the truth for sure. So if it's a globe, then you want to know for sure and you want to prove it. Or if it's flat, then we certainly want to prove that. Or if you're like the regular person named Steven and you think that it's a concave Earth where we live on the inside of the ball stuck to the outside wall, this sort of free roaming, pioneering, and not to mention free enterprise that's involved with the southernmost region. Whether we live on a stationary plane or whether we live on a globe, the area known as Antarctica and, of course, the Arctic, so the northern and the southern polar regions, are allegedly vast quantities of land with untapped resources like coal and possibly uranium and oil, and there's a good reason to allow free roaming. We should petition the Antarctic and the Arctic boards, which is who this petition is to. We should petition them to basically step down and allow us modern humans to debate the issue and decide for ourselves whether or not we'd like to keep Antarctica off limits, for example. Most of the world military powers who signed the Antarctic Treaty into law are long deceased, And I think it's ridiculous to allow people that don't even walk the face of the earth any longer to continue making our decisions for us when we are, in fact, sovereign, free people who are perfectly capable and perfectly responsible enough to make decisions for ourselves. We don't need these antiquated agreements or these really ineffective, unfounded agreements of world powers following the years after the end of World War II to continue making our decisions for us. I think the Antarctic and the Arctic treaties are unconstitutional. We should not, for example, one of the laws involved with the Antarctic Treaty is essentially prevents people from traveling that far south and bringing any excess fuel or storing any fuel. So even if you can make it down there, you're not going to do much free roaming and exploring. Otherwise, you're liable to be arrested and heavily fined. So, if we say that it's a free country or if we say that it's a free world and yet certain areas are off limits to us, and lots of people argue that even children go on field trips to the Antarctic, but that's totally missing the point. We're not allowed to do geodetic surveying of anywhere but exactly where the military wants us to go. We can take guided tours and we can, walk around the same little areas of the so-called Antarctic. But when it comes to actually, sending free vessels under their own navigation, under their own volition, without the oversight and itinerary laid forth by the military and the world powers, there's no reason for it. And there's no reason, frankly, to prevent corporations from capitalizing on the untapped resources of the Antarctic. Now, I'm certainly no huge fan of unbridled capitalism and corporate greed, but at the same time, I see them demolishing the beautiful mountain ranges on the East Coast, specifically the Blue Ridge Mountains, getting up into Virginia, some of the most beautiful territory you'll ever lay your eyes on, and they're just basically strip mining this stuff, which means blowing up the mountains in order to get at the coal and to get at the resources more easily. And in fact, they waste more resources than they actually strip out of the thing, but they just get such vast quantities at once, it's actually worth it for them on a profit and loss scale in terms of the corporate bottom line, which is importantly the most important thing in this world. More important than our health, more important than our understanding of the world, and more important than even, looking at, one thing it's not as important than is the Antarctic Treaty, because apparently even corporations are banned from doing their thing down there. Now, I'm not saying let's go exploit the southernmost regions, but the purpose of this petition is to get enough people on board to start questioning the validity of the Antarctic treaties and see if we, as a modern group of people, agree with the tenets. Because, again, and not to harp on this point, and I will wrap this up pretty quickly, but I just don't see the sense in allowing these antiquated treaties drafted by a bunch of people that are dead, for lack of a better word, to somehow continue dictating the path of our society. These treaties were signed into law during a phase in history that's completely different than the phase of history that we live in now. And there's just too much at stake. There's too much possibility. There's too much control going on here that is apparently there's no reason for it. There is no indigenous wildlife to protect in the southern polar region, for example, so it's not a wildlife thing. And, these corporations are already demolishing the rainforests and demolishing the mountain ranges right here in the United States, right here in our backyards. They're just drilling oil all over the place, even off in the near coastal seas, and we saw what kind of mess that creates. So technically, the Antarctic would be the perfect place for corporations to do their drilling and digging, and that way we wouldn't have to worry about it spilling over into our little, lives in our little hunky-dory situation that we've got going on here in America. So it really only makes sense to let's sign this petition. You can do it electronically. I'll see if I can open up some other channels to get signatures on this, but I think we should put up big numbers. Again, this isn't just strictly limited to those of us who want to end this flat earth, round earth debate once and for all. this should apply to everyone, whether you are totally indifferent in terms of the shape and nature of the world, because one of the characteristics or attributes that makes us humans, that makes us different than, the beasts, is our curiosity, our pioneering spirit, our want to know what's beyond, our never-ending questions. And I just don't see how this is even possible that rational humans with these characteristics are just turned off and don't even want to consider exploring or seeing what's beyond the southernmost region and seeing what sort of opportunity it holds. And of course, when you look at the reports of U.S. Admiral Richard E. Byrd, he stated in the 50s that the Antarctic was full of natural resources that could power the world for centuries. And I just don't understand why it's sort of completely off limits to corporations, and you can only go there for peaceful scientific research under the watchful eye of the military and only on their given approved routes. This is ridiculous. If we are indeed a free people, a free world, a free country, then we should be able to go wherever we want, and the government should be a service to the people, since we do pay our taxes to support the government. If a bunch of us decide that we want to go to the Antarctic and do some geodetic surveying and do some scientific research, the government should actually click its heels and set up the infrastructure that we need to get there. So they should give us ships and medical care and take care of, any legalities. But see, instead of the government being a servant to the people, things have been flipped on their head in the last couple hundred years or so, especially in the last 100 years since the foundation of the Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private bank preying on the backs of the citizens like a tick. But that's sort of besides the point. Our country has been turned upside down to the point to where the government dishes out the orders and basically tells us what we can and cannot do, and spies on us and takes our money for taxes and spends it on black budget programs that ends up losing trillions of dollars every year, or whatever that number is. It's a ridiculously high amount of money that is just lost. Not to mention the Federal Reserve itself being completely incompetent, since it was designed to prevent inflation, and since its inception in 1913, our dollar has fallen to basically nothing but about 4 or 5 cents of its previous value. So the bureaucracy that's responsible for entities like the Federal Reserve Bank ought to go. There's no need for them. They're obsolete and they're a tick on the ass of the people. And entities like the Antarctic Board and the Arctic Board are obsolete. There's no purpose for them to be there. The Antarctic Treaty was signed into law in an antiquated situation right after World War II, and the people of this world who are modern, contemporary adults never agreed to those terms, and it is time now that we revisit those terms, question the foundation of the Antarctic Treaty and the Arctic Treaty, and sign this petition to show your support for this movement and to show your want to question and revisit and debate the Antarctic Treaty and ultimately move to have these things abolished, since they're anti-constitutional and they serve no purpose in reality to begin with. Okay, guys, so I'll go ahead and just walk you through the petition real quick. Again, it's at the petitionsite.com, care to petitions. I'll put a link in the description. Here's my nifty little graphic, so you can recognize that when you log in. I guess you have to set up an account to sign. I really urge you guys to do so. Let's get this signed. I want to get 100,000 signatures. I know that sounds like a lot, but I think we can do it. Okay, so the Sovereign People's Movement to abolish the Arctic and Antarctic treaties. So far, one supporter, so that's always great. Thank you for whoever that is. Both the Arctic Treaty and the Antarctic Treaty are fundamentally immoral, antiquated, unfounded agreements made between the world military powers of yesteryear during the volatile and uncertain political climate in the years following the end of World War II. The treaties, defined as the Antarctic and Arctic treaties, are unjustifiable obstacles that prevent free people and free enterprise from exploring and pioneering the last great frontier on Earth. Based on the exploration of the Antarctic conducted by U.S. Admiral Richard E. Byrd during the 1950s Antarctic expedition known as Operation High Jump,